Hey everyone, it's Rob Beeler from Beeler.Tech. I'm here with Matthew Goldstein, MSG, and it's that time of year again or the time of the quarter, if you will, to go through your analysis on what the publicly traded companies have been up to, what they've been saying. Matt, you got this out earlier this week. Heard there's some feedback. People have been responding to what you've been sending out.
Yeah, so as we discussed before, I had to move to MailChimp, right? So it's a little more professional. I sent it to about 1,200 people. I'm giving away all the details now. I had a 45% open rate, which I think is pretty good. My one before was much higher, so we'll see what happens next time around. Maybe it's diminishing returns. I can now track who reads it, and it's some people who read it. Bob, to some people, that brought delight to me, knowing because he's the CEO of Viacom, and he actually took the time to look at it and to forward it. So it's exciting.
That's great. Of course, you shared the detail.
I do get 4 unsubscribes, which I'm upset about.
Well, of course, you're going to go into the details, even though you didn't want to, but you're going to because you're an analyst. You're an analyst in just moving forward. So you're going to do that.
So my biggest highlight was, and I guess you could say I'm a trade desk fan once we go through this. The person who runs investor relations at the trade desk actually invited me to his analyst day on Wednesday, 2 days ago, because we're recording this on Friday. I could not go. But again, I was the happiest person in the world that I got invited to that, and hopefully I get invited to the next one.
I think, and I'm just going to put in one side thing. I just came back from London, where I actually had Anna Forbes, who's the GM of the UK. I actually had her present, and one of the reasons I was so pushed for that to happen was just because I knew publishers don't get to hear from the trade desk, and all the things I learned from our recordings, I was like, yes, let's get there in front. She talked about the future of the media, hit all the points. I felt so smart because we'd gone through this, so let's go through this.
Well, I have to add one more thing, even though I said there would be no small talk. Someone did reach out to me and said, you need to tell me what you're sending out beforehand because Roku stock went up after you send this out. And I said, that's not happening. That's not true. And by the way, I should say, and I'll put this, I own no stocks. I have mutual funds. I do not own a single one of these stocks and never will.
Yeah, same, actually. I feel almost embarrassed to say that, but it's true.
Yeah, you have to disclose that now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got to that point. Well, cool. So let's get right into it. I mean, you've gone through, again, you've listened to all these earning reports, you've summed it up, you've added this with your other reports, other analysis.
One more thing, full transparency. I listen to probably 90% of them, maybe one time I don't. But I also go to Seeking Alpha, and they have the transcripts. So I don't listen to them, I read the entire transcript.
Okay, all right.
And again, more I get.
Well, you're reviewing it, right? That's more than 98%, 99% of anyone else is doing right now. So let's talk about some of these overall trends. The triopoly, all the way to what's going on with digital ad sales.
So no surprise, Google, Facebook, Amazon, I've said this before, they have logged in users. They're outperforming the market by far, stealing share by far. And it seems like it's not stopping. It seems like they continue to grow and grow and grow. And at some point, the law of big numbers, they're going to have to stop. But it's remarkable watching them grow and watching Amazon as I called this probably a year ago as part of the triopoly, just growing and growing in everything they do.
Yeah. And again, it's amazing the news and how much they get beat up in the news business-wise.
Well, it doesn't matter because their advertising works the best for the marketers all the time, and that's why they're right. And yeah, they measure their own homework, and they're the umpire and batter calling balls and strikes, and they have that pixel, the conversion pixel. But the return on ad spend works for these marketers. That's why they're there.
Yeah, and if you think, and obviously a big part of that is the self-serve modules.
Yeah, so of course, like Google, Facebook, Amazon have self-serve. Spotify's building self-serve. Hulu's going to build self-serve. I assume Pinterest, which I called out, they'll, as going public soon, I assume they'll have self-serve. I know that other companies trying to build, Criteo's building self-serve. I know other companies trying to build self-serve, but I think at the end of the day, it's really, really hard, and that's why you don't see too many companies do it.
Well,
but when you have self works, it makes an unbelievable difference.
And it's a scale self-serve, right? If you gave me 40 companies I could work with to do self-serve, I'd still select 2 or 3 just because of the work that you've just pushed the work out, right? So it's something where you've got to have the scale. It's got to work. Not everyone's going to be self-serve.
At the end of the day, if I'm a marketer, right, what platforms do I have to be on? I have to be on Google, self-serve for search. I have to be on Facebook, self-serve for everything they do, right? I have to be on a DSP, right? Probably the Trade Desk or DBM feel like they are the 2 far leaders above everyone else, right? And then maybe if I'm a niche, I do a Twitter or Snapchat or Criteo or Pinterest. But that's the way the world's going in these self-serve modules. And I think, as people have said over and all, if it's digital, it's going to go programmatic sooner than later.
Right. Well, and that gets to really the DTC video, right? So almost like, again, where I was going with the self-serve, you can only have so many of these apps. It's like an app. It's like a mobile app. You get some point, you have too much saturation. You get too many things. How do you some of the people are going to win?
And I believe with DTC, so DTC video, or permeated everything in all these earnings calls. CTV, over and over, people talked about it. There's Netflix #1, there's Amazon #2. They're clearly to be some of the other ones out there. We pay for Amazon, we pay for Netflix, we're going to pay for something else. I personally believe that Disney and Warner and HBO are going to have a harder time. I look at Hulu as their third. Hulu's not an always on. Hulu is when there's a good show, you buy it and then you put it on pause.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like the same thing with HBO. Because of Amazon Prime, new show. Right. Think about it. Netflix has a new show. It feels like every day. Yeah. HBO feels like they have a new show once a month. Right. And if I'm binging, I don't need them always on.
Right.
Now, the only one out there is Disney Plus, and I've had different conversations with people. I think it'll do really well for mom and dad who have a 2 to 7 year old. Right after that, I think you're going to do what you do with Hulu. You'll binge for a while and then you go away.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what you're going to see and play out. We talked a little bit about some of that at your last event. The other big thing I think that came out of your event was talking about the impressions, inventory, and the glut, right? And where that is.
So again, these are all pattern recognitions, pattern I'm seeing. It's not just once. I know for a fact that programmatic impressions are up, and this is probably more Q1 2019, but Q4 as well. And if you listen to these earnings calls, the sense I got where CPMs are flat digitally, and then impressions are up. So overall, we're having an abundance of impressions in the marketplace, therefore bringing CPMs down overall.
Yeah.
In long term, that might be okay. It might help the advertisers, but I think with too much inventory, it feels like, and this is a word I'm using over and over, it feels like, supply and demand are not in equilibrium.
Right.
Well, by the way, I just wrote something. I'm actually working on my What I Saw Happen update right now, and I just wrote something this morning about not being in equilibrium in ad tech is people wanting jobs, which is a whole different conversation.
Looking forward to that. And the thing but the thing that comes out of what you said is the phrase that the tragedy of the commons, right? I've used that since then to just hit on the point that, like, hey, we're all racing in the same direction and it's not to our all benefit. We need to come up with other plans, and that's a key thing.
And what I say, like, unfortunately, it might not end well for a lot of people and companies.
Yeah. Switching degrees here, switching direction just quickly is linear TV. You've been tracking that as well. What's going on there?
Yeah. So again, the broadcasters don't really say this. You sort of have to read between the lines. But it feels like it's down, excluding political. Political just rocks the whole platform, the whole system, grows everything. I'm sure it's going to be ridiculously big in 2020. But if you take out political, it feels like ratings keep on going down for linear television. It's amazing that CPMs keep on going up, right? Because for what I know, the 70 billion revenue number US is still the $70 billion revenue number. But there's no way long-term this maintains itself. And that's where I think CTV comes in and just starts to crush everyone, which feels like it's happening, not crushing, but it's happening. It gets bigger and bigger as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything else on the CTV front that you're, again, I think you're right. It's not there yet, but it's starting. You can feel the wave coming.
Well, it's interesting because the last 4 earning calls were like Roku, The Trade Desk, Telaria, and Rubicon, and CTV permeated every one of those earnings calls, right? And I do believe that the Trade Desk is going to be the front door, the platform for buying CTV in the future. The objective third party, you want to buy CTV as an advertiser, you go to the Trade Desk. I think they'll eventually have direct relationships with most of the bigger TV publishers, and I think they win that game long term.
Interesting.
Right, because I don't want to go to different DSPs to buy TV. I don't want to go to AppNexus and buy, CTV, because I don't think AppNexus is that good at video like the Trade Desk is. The Trade Desk feels like they started going CTV 2 years ago, and that's why they're the head of the game.
We've talked about Netflix going into advertising, and they seem to be pretty strong that they are not.
I don't think they're going to do it. I think they are storytellers, and ads hurt the ability to storytell, and I don't think they need to. And I think they're going to make enough money without having ads. But if they did get ads, they make $10 billion in day one.
That's right. And my thought being is, what if Netflix really if they come into advertising, they get to set the tone. They could sit there and say, through the Trade Desk, right? I said that
before. Someone's going to buy the Trade Desk, okay?
Yeah.
I think it should be Comcast instead of the crappy companies that are looking at right now. Sorry about that if anybody works for one of those companies. I have to be careful what I say now. But I think if Netflix wants to get into CTV advertising, they spend the $10 to $12 billion. They buy the Trade Desk. That's the front door home run.
Yeah. Again, I think they're a kingmaker in the future. They could really choose a couple things, say this is how we're going to transact, and people will go, that's the new way. Could be interesting to see them.
Yeah.
Right? Just whether they do it or not.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about digital ad sales. Real direct work. Again, you saw some trends there.
It makes it harder and harder now to get this data because there's so few publicly traded companies that talk about direct ad sales. The ones I called right here were the New York Times again, and IAC's Dotdash, which you sort of hear about, and and they feel like they're sort of really humming and doing pretty well. Also, 2 days ago, I listened to J2 earnings call. J2 owns Everyday Health and PC Mag and ZD, and I think I'm going to incorporate them into the next quarter's update because they have a direct ad sales business, and they also have a very big performance marketing business as well.
Yeah. I get a feeling the same thing of just that those direct things are there, and they still exist, they still work, but it's
very hard to get that data in these calls, and the analysts who ask the questions never ask about it, which is why I want to start asking those questions.
Oh, that's great. That's cool.
That's my other goal.
Let's flip the script here. Agencies.
Okay.
Anything for the earning reports and agencies that's good?
I sometimes I feel like I shouldn't even listen to them anymore.
Wow.
Right? The agencies' earnings calls. They're pretty dry. Not a lot of information. I just think long term they're struggling. It's going to be really hard. So it's some. But I guess I sort of have to.
Yeah. Well, I think that was, I think you had some thoughts around performance advertising, and
again, when you listen to the trends, you listen to 25 earnings calls, you sort of hear a couple mentions over and over. As another example, I digress. today I heard 3 mentions of Philadelphia. Can't take that only take right. So it's pattern recognition. You hear these things over and over. So the same thing with, it feels like performance advertising, performance marketing. Every advertiser wants a little more performance, a little more attribution. It probably all started with Facebook and the Pixel, but once they get that crack at one place, they want it more and more. And again, that's permeating throughout the entire industry.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're a marketer that sort of makes you happy, at least you can tell, what's working for the most part. Again, batter calling balls and strikes, but we still all believe directionally it's okay.
Right. We already talked about the trade desk, but one of the things is the esports, the esports piece of this that you're finding a new pattern, right?
Yeah. So in my what I saw happen update, I have a new section I added for esports. So I just think that is so interesting, and that companies esports rarely gets mentioned. Okay, Netflix talked about Fortnite taking away viewing from Netflix, right? CBS or NBC or Viacom never talk about esports, right? The trade desk talked about gaming and esports in their earnings call. I mean, Amazon, I guess they did because they own Twitch, but it feels like all these large media companies are just missing a big opportunity to get into esports, which I believe is going to be a real threat in the future of just taking away viewership and then what that means in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, as well as other sports, which are the cornerstones of broadcast and other places.
It's esports, e-gaming, gambling. They all go together. And, how old are your kids? How old are my kids? That's what they do all the time. And I feel like these older men typically running these media companies are sort of missing something about this younger generation and where their viewing behavior is going and what's happening. And yes, Viacom, Bob Bakish buys Pluto TV, so they're moving there. It's probably hard to move in this direction, but it feels like they're just not getting there as much as they can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're right. Look at I'm looking at the way my kids consume, and the only reason my daughter even knows about the NFL is because her teacher has like a little gambling thing to teach statistics and math, and that's it. Couldn't even play the cities, the players. Never watched a football game. Never watched a football game.
Right.
Yeah. So 5G.
Yeah. So 5G, again, you talk a lot about the Verizon and AT&T, and 5G will change all media consumption. I do not know exactly how. And I listened to one thing. They said, 4G today, download a movie, it's 2.5 minutes. 5G, so buffering goes away, everything becomes instantaneous. What does that mean? I do not know. But like you and I talked about before, and we'll talk about again in a month, you need to start thinking about the future. And 5G is going to change media consumption, which therefore is going to adjust every single company in here and what they do for a living.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Another one I don't have right here, Rob, I also wrote, because I think I updated it, was Pinterest. There's a bunch of companies going public. I believe Pinterest is the one that's more ad-driven than anyone else. It'll be fascinating to listen to what they have to say when they do their quarterly earnings call, the first one, I guess, in Q2 or Q3.
Great. Yeah, so I mean, I think that those are great insights. I mean, they definitely match kind of what's happening.
Like you and I, we could have a conversation for an hour and a half. It's just not worth it. These are the top line insights that are the most interesting.
Well, that's right. Well,
right?
But I do think the other thing that you talked about, and I thought was worth mentioning, is which of these reports to actually kind of listen into, right? Like which are the good ones and which are the ones maybe steer away from. I'm going to pull these up here.
25, and I called out 5 right here of the 25, and it feels like 25 is a good number. Otherwise, it becomes diminishing returns for me. Because the opening, it blows me away listening to what he's saying for the first 10. Now, all the Q&A in there was about China, which is a whole different conversation, right? Because I don't really think about China, but he was in China when he took the phone call, and the Q&A was about China. But if you listen to it once, which I did, I listened to it again. and I actually put a reminder on my calendar to listen again in a month. Right? He just goes out of his way, and it feels like he's a CEO who understands the details so much of the business, which to me is reflective on the performance of the company.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's that one I recommend as well. That I've enjoyed. Thank you for
Listen to
that. What's next?
that one. To that one.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
You listen to the Trade Desk.
Yes, the last one, not this one, not the one from China.
Okay. You listen to this one. Phenomenal.
Okay.
The other one I loved was the New York Times, right? And the reason I loved it is because they talked about the subscription business so much. Again, every question they're going, Trump, not Trump, their aspirations for the future, the cohort analysis and everything else, deep knowledge of the subscription, which you don't get anywhere else. And if you think about it, right, Netflix is, right, they just don't answer it. And no one thinks to ask those questions, but the New York Times, since that's where they're going strong, there's just all the great information about subscription.
Great. Rubicon, which I read some stuff about Rubicon, so I'm interested in your take on it.
Yeah, Michael Barrett again does really good detail on the programmatic industry, and because they're an ad tech company, you get a little more information than you would from a Comcast or a AT&T or a Viacom. So I felt like there's a lot of good sort of maybe inside baseball. And by the way, Rubicon, Teleria, and Roku, right? A lot of sort of deeper inside baseball about programmatic, CTV, working is what's where you big guys, but since a smaller guy focused on this area and the analysts are pretty good, you get some really good understanding what's happening there.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. The worst listen. What was the worst?
Okay, I had this before. As I listen to these phone calls, again, the agencies ones are not that great. I would love to help the agency people with their earnings calls and make them more interesting. But CBS, right, which just left, Les Moonves left. They have a new CEO in there. It felt like the entire earnings call was an ad, a sales pitch about how great the company is and talking about the future. And I'm like, I'm on this earnings call to hear about Q4, not about 2020 going forward, right? And to me, like, that's what the rule should be. The rule should be you need to talk about the quarter that just happened, not about the future.
Yeah, cool. All right, interesting. So let's. I think all of that is great. I wanted to come up here just to say that, so this is one of your reports. Obviously, this will come out next quarter. The next version of this, you're working on what I saw happen, the outlook, and great companies to work for. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you've got?
Okay, so what I saw happen, I'm working on right now. Publicly traded company just reviewed. Now, I've written the 3-year advertising media outlook, right? I just have not had a chance to publish it, QA it, and maybe you could help me, Rob. I need someone to help me just take another stab at it because, like, I have all the information there, but my overall executive summary is just missing something. And I've also done great companies to work for, right? Which I need to publish it as well. And I also don't want to overwhelm everyone with too many emails coming out. And then I'm actually doing this in real time, Rob. If you go back to your little image right there.
Yeah, I'll pull it back.
I also did. Go back to your little image right there. Do you have it?
Yep, coming back up. Right.
That's the other one I'm working on. If I were to start a publisher today or buy a publisher, this is what I would look for. And I have a list of 27 to 35 things you look for in a publisher. And I think I'm actually going to talk about that at Programmatic I/O in the first week of May.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And yeah, again, it's pulling all
MSG right there. Yeah.
So very cool. Well, thank you for walking through all of that. Again, you could get the email. We had the information for signing up on the screen there for some time. So if you are only watching the video, definitely get on the mailing list. And we'll continue to do it.
Two more things. They can email me, right, and I'll add them to the mailing list if they have any questions. msg@yahoo.com. Again, msg@yahoo.com. They can email you, Rob, and you'll get in touch with me.
Absolutely.
And I do like this 25-minute format. It feels like that's a better time because sometimes you and I can go on a little too long. I hope the viewers like this. And if you want to send us feedback, please send us feedback. We will listen to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to improve this. Again, this is something we do to get better at this. And so your feedback on the video to the email, all of that is super helpful. And so kind of,
I always have one more thing to add. I'm also using my wife's Mac, right? Because my PC will not render video, but my PC works ridiculously well with Excel, so I can't get rid of my PC and go to a Mac. So I'm using my wife's Mac to do this conversation.
Great. Well, I think we were, I think we did okay. I think there was a little bit of distortion on some of it. Just some of the video was a little bit edgy, but hopefully we're in good shape. With that, have a great weekend, Matthew. I'll get this out as quick as I can. And for some of you, I will see you in Miami next week and look forward to the next report.
Thank you very much. See you, everybody. Bye.